Victoria Hale was the kind of person people noticed the moment she walked into a room. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had built an empire with her own hands. As the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech manufacturing companies, she was known everywhere for her intelligence, her discipline, and her extremely high standards. But she was also known for something else: her impatience and her sharp way of speaking. People admired her success, yet many feared her presence. One wrong word around her could shake someone for days. On a warm afternoon, Victoria's schedule was packed. She had a site visit at one of her company's large distribution centers. It was a place filled with machines, forklifts, boxes, and hundreds of employees working hard to move products to customers around the country. She rarely visited in person, so when she did, the entire staff usually tried their best to look perfect. As her luxury black sedan turned into the main gate, the employees straightened up immediately. Some adjusted their uniforms, some stopped chatting, and a few whispered, "She's here." Although many respected her deeply, her arrival always added tension to the air. Everyone knew she liked things done perfectly, and she had no problem pointing out mistakes in front of others. Her driver parked the car near the entrance. Victoria stepped out, wearing a crisp white suit and dark sunglasses. She walked as though she owned not just the company but the entire street. She began her inspection, asking questions about operations, costs, delays, and productivity. Managers scrambled to answer her, hoping they said the right thing. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until the unexpected happened. After her tour, she returned to her car, ready to head to her next meeting. She opened the door, sat down, and signaled the driver to start the engine. But instead of the smooth purr she was used to, the engine made a strange coughing sound and shut off. The driver tried again. Still nothing. Victoria frowned. "What is happening?" she asked in a calm but sharp voice. "I'm not sure, ma'am," the driver replied nervously. "It worked fine this morning." Several employees nearby turned their heads, unsure whether to step forward or stay still. The driver stepped out to check quickly, but he clearly didn't know much about engines. Victoria tapped her fingers on her knee, irritation growing inside her. She had no time for surprises, especially not mechanical problems in front of her staff. One of the supervisors hurried over and said, "Ma'am, we have a mechanic on site. I can call him right away." "Do it," Victoria responded without looking up. A few minutes later, a tall, calm-looking man appeared from the workshop area. His name was Marcus Reed. He wore a simple dark blue uniform with his name stitched on the pocket. Marcus had been working at the center for several years. He was known by many employees as someone who didn't talk much, but worked extremely well. He had fixed everything from forklifts to delivery trucks, and people trusted him. As he approached the car, Victoria glanced at him briefly. She noticed his quiet confidence, but didn't pay much attention. To her, he was just another worker. She pointed toward the car and said, "The engine isn't starting. Please look at it." Marcus nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am. I'll check it." He walked around the car carefully, listening to the sound it made when the driver tried to start it again. He asked a few quick questions, then opened the hood. The employees gathered around at a respectful distance, curious to see how the scene would unfold. Everyone could sense Victoria's irritation, and no one wanted to be near the center of her frustration. While Marcus examined the engine, Victoria crossed her arms. She didn't enjoy waiting, especially not in front of an audience. After a few minutes, she called out, "Is it something simple? I hope this doesn't take long. I have an important meeting." Marcus didn't look up. He continued inspecting the parts carefully, taking his time to understand the issue fully. "I'm still checking, ma'am," he said in a calm voice. "Please give me a moment." Victoria raised an eyebrow. She was not used to people telling her to give a moment. She glanced at the managers standing nearby, then back at Marcus. A hint of impatience stirred in her voice as she said loudly enough for others to hear, "If you can fix this engine today, I'll marry you." Some employees chuckled nervously. They knew she didn't mean it. It was just her way of showing frustration through a joke. But to Marcus, the words felt disrespectful. He had heard jokes like that before in other places, comments made by people who assumed his work was simple, or who believed joking at his expense was harmless. He didn't say anything, but his expression changed for a moment, just long enough for one of the supervisors to notice. But Marcus wasn't someone who let rude comments control him. He took a slow breath and focused on the engine again. The more he looked, the clearer the issue became. Another mechanic had worked on the car earlier and had made a mistake while reinstalling a component. That mistake had caused several smaller problems, all building up until the car refused to start at the worst possible moment. Victoria, unaware of this, kept pacing. She checked her watch again and again. Her frustration was rising, but she didn't want to admit that a small engine problem had disrupted her entire schedule. Marcus finally stood up. "I know what the problem is," he said calmly. Victoria turned toward him, relieved but still impatient. "Then fix it quickly." He nodded and went to get his tools. He returned with a small box and knelt beside the car, working with steady hands. While he worked, Victoria watched him from behind her sunglasses. At first she saw nothing special, just a mechanic doing his job. But slowly, she began to notice how focused he was, how confident his movements were, how he didn't rush even though she had spoken sharply to him. Minutes passed, and the employees watched quietly. Marcus tightened one last bolt, wiped his hands, and closed the hood gently. "You can try starting it now," he said. The driver got in and turned the key. This time, the engine came to life smoothly, almost more quietly than before. Everyone looked impressed. Marcus stepped back, quietly satisfied with his work. Victoria paused for a moment. She wasn't expecting the repair to be so quick or so perfect. Her irritation faded, replaced by mild surprise. "Is it fixed completely?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied. "It should run better now. The problem came from an earlier mistake. I repaired it and made sure nothing else is affected." Victoria looked at him more carefully, really seeing him for the first time. There was no pride or arrogance in his voice, only quiet confidence. He didn't ask for praise. He didn't mention her earlier comment. He simply did his job with professionalism. "Well," she said softly. "Thank you." Marcus nodded politely. "You're welcome." But the employees who watched the scene unfold knew something important had happened. The CEO, who rarely apologized, had just spoken with unexpected sincerity, and the mechanic who had been mocked had proven his skill with calm strength. As Victoria stepped back into her car, the moment stayed with her longer than she expected. For the first time in a long while, she felt something she didn't usually feel during her site visits, a sense of curiosity about someone she had overlooked. She didn't know it yet, but this small moment, this simple engine failure, was the beginning of a story far bigger than anyone standing there could imagine. After the car incident, Marcus returned to his workshop area quietly, just as he always did. He placed his tools back in their proper spots, wiped his hands with a clean cloth, and continued working on a forklift that had been waiting for repair earlier. To him, fixing Victoria's luxury car was simply another task in his day. He didn't expect anything to come from it. He didn't want attention, and he certainly didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him because of what she had said. But the employees around the center couldn't stop talking about it. "Did you see the way he fixed that car in no time?" one worker whispered. "She really told him she'd marry him if he fixed it," another said with a laugh. "I can't believe she said that in front of everyone." Most people found the moment shocking, surprising, or awkward. But many also admired Marcus for the way he handled it. He remained calm, respectful, and professional, even when put in an uncomfortable situation. Meanwhile, Victoria sat in the back of her car as her driver pulled away from the site. She opened her tablet to check her schedule, but her mind kept drifting back to the moment when her car wouldn't start and the mechanic Marcus stepped forward to help. She remembered his calm expression, his steady hands, and the way he answered her without fear or impatience. She remembered the silence he kept, even when she made that careless joke. She remembered how he didn't react or make her feel uncomfortable about it. He simply did his job, better than she expected. Victoria wasn't used to feeling unsure or embarrassed. But this time, she did feel something she couldn't ignore. As the car moved toward her next meeting, she took off her sunglasses and stared out the window. What was his name? She wondered silently. She didn't ask him during the repair. She rarely asked the names of employees she met during site visits. But this time, she wanted to know. Back at the distribution center, Marcus continued his work. He didn't mention the incident to anyone unless they asked him. And even then, he responded with a simple, "I just fixed the car, that's all." He preferred to stay humble. And he always believed actions spoke louder than words. Still, a part of him kept thinking about the CEO's tone when she spoke. He knew she didn't mean her words literally. But the way the room reacted made him feel like he had been the center of a quiet joke. Marcus wasn't angry, far from it. He had faced comments like that before in life. But he did hope that one day, people would learn to speak with more respect, no matter who they were talking to. Later that evening, after his shift ended, Marcus walked home through the quiet neighborhood streets. He enjoyed the walk every day. It helped him clear his mind after hours of working with machines and tools. His home was small but peaceful, a place he felt comfortable and safe. He made himself a simple dinner, sat at his table, and thought again about the CEO. Why did she say that? He asked himself softly. Was she just frustrated? Or does she always talk like that? He didn't know. He had only seen her from a distance before. During her previous visits, she always looked powerful, sharp, and extremely focused. But today, he caught a small glimpse of something else, an expression she showed for half a second when the car finally started. It wasn't arrogance or impatience. It was something more like surprise, maybe even respect. Marcus shook his head. He didn't want to think too much about it. He had work in the morning, and he believed it was better to focus on the things he could control. The next day, the distribution center was buzzing with energy again. But this time it wasn't because of Victoria's visit. People were talking about Marcus. Many employees congratulated him, some joked with him in a friendly way, and others expressed admiration for his skills. "Man, you're famous now," one of his coworkers said with a grin. Marcus chuckled softly. "Not famous. I just did my job." But things took an unexpected turn that afternoon. A manager walked into the workshop holding a tablet. "Marcus," he said, "the main office wants a quick report from you about the repair yesterday." Marcus looked up from the engine he was working on. "A report? About the car?" "Yes," the manager replied. Apparently Miss Hale asked for details. Marcus blinked in surprise. "She did?" The manager nodded. "She wants to know exactly what went wrong and how you fixed it." Marcus wasn't used to writing reports about things like this. Usually, his work spoke for itself. But he agreed. He washed his hands, sat at a small desk in the corner, and typed up a simple, clear explanation of the problem and the steps he took to solve it. He kept the tone professional and respectful. When he finished, he handed the tablet back to the manager, who sent the report to the main office immediately. Meanwhile, in her tall office on the top floor of the company headquarters, Victoria received the report. She opened it and was impressed by how clearly and professionally it was written. No unnecessary words. No bragging, just clean, direct explanation. She leaned back in her chair, tapping her finger on the side of her coffee mug. "So, he really does know what he's doing," she murmured. For the rest of the day, she found herself thinking about the situation more often than she expected. Her schedule was full of meetings, presentations, and calls. But her mind kept wandering to that moment when she joked at the mechanic's expense. She didn't usually reflect on her actions so deeply, but something about this incident felt different. That evening, she sat alone in her office longer than usual. The windows looked out over the city, glowing with thousands of lights. She removed her glasses, rubbed her forehead, and let out a soft sigh. "I shouldn't have said that," she whispered to herself, something she rarely admitted. It wasn't just about professionalism. It wasn't just about company image. It was about being fair, being kind, being respectful. She prided herself on being strong, smart, and unstoppable, but she never wanted to be someone who hurt others. She stood up, paced across the room, and sat back down. Then she opened her laptop and searched for Marcus's employee file. She read through his history, years of experience, excellent performance, no complaints, and a long list of successful repairs and improvements he had made for the company's equipment. "He's talented," she said quietly, and I spoke to him like he was nothing. For the first time in a long while, she felt the need to make something right, but she didn't act immediately. Instead, she took time to think. She wanted her next steps to be sincere, not rushed. The next morning at the distribution center, Marcus was surprised again when the same manager from yesterday approached him. "Marcus," he said, "the CEO sent a message. She wants you to come to the headquarters next week." Marcus blinked. "Me? Why?" "She wants to discuss something with you. And she asked to meet you personally." Marcus felt a mix of confusion and curiosity. The CEO wanted to meet him? What could she possibly want from a mechanic like him? Employees around him who overheard the conversation looked shocked. "The CEO? Calling you to headquarters? Wow," one coworker whispered. Marcus didn't know what this meant. But one thing was clear. His life at the company was about to change in a way he never imagined, and neither he nor Victoria had any idea how deeply this one small repair would connect their paths in the days to come. Marcus spent the next few days wondering about the sudden request from the CEO. He had never been to the company's headquarters before. He had never met a top-level leader in a private meeting either. He was used to tools, machines, engines, and workstations, not polished offices, glass elevators, or giant conference rooms. His coworkers tried to guess why Victoria wanted to see him. "Maybe she wants to promote you," one said. "Maybe she wants to thank you in person," another joked. "Or maybe," a third coworker teased, "she wants to talk about that marriage comment." Everyone laughed, but Marcus just shook his head. "Nothing like that," he said calmly. "She just wants to talk about the car repair." Still, a small part of him felt nervous. It wasn't fear, it was simply the unknown. He didn't know what to expect. He didn't know how she would speak to him. He didn't know if the meeting would affect his job. When the day finally came, Marcus woke up earlier than usual. He ironed his uniform carefully, making sure every crease was straight. He shaved, brushed his shoes, and packed a small notebook, just in case she asked him to explain something technical. He arrived at the headquarters a few minutes before the meeting time. The building was tall, modern, and covered with shining glass windows that reflected the morning sun. He had seen pictures of the headquarters online, but being there in person felt completely different. Everything looked expensive, calm, and organized. At the front desk, the receptionist smiled politely. "You must be Marcus Reed. Please wait a moment. Miss Hale's assistant will take you upstairs." Marcus nodded, feeling slightly out of place in a building full of people wearing suits. Moments later, a well-dressed assistant greeted him and guided him to the elevator. "The CEO will meet you in her private office," the assistant said kindly. Marcus simply nodded again, trying not to show how nervous he felt. As the elevator rose higher and higher, the view outside the glass wall grew more impressive. The city stretched out below him, and for a moment, he felt like he was entering a completely different world, a world far away from grease, tools, and workshop noise. When the elevator reached the top floor, the assistant led him through a quiet hallway. At the end stood a large wooden door. She gently knocked twice, then stepped aside. "Come in," Victoria's voice called from inside. The assistant opened the door and motioned for Marcus to enter. He took a small breath and walked in. Victoria was standing near the window, looking at a document on her tablet. She turned around when she saw him, offering a polite smile, a smile Marcus wasn't expecting. "Marcus Reed," she said, her voice warm but formal. Marcus nodded respectfully. "Thank you for inviting me, ma'am." "Please, sit," she said, pointing to a chair across from her desk. Marcus sat down carefully, placing his notebook on his lap. Victoria took her seat on the other side. For a moment, the room was quiet. Victoria seemed to be gathering her thoughts. Marcus waited patiently. Finally, she spoke. "I read your report," she began. "It was clear and very professional." "I appreciate that. Thank you," Marcus replied softly. "And I wanted to apologize." Her voice lowered just slightly. Marcus lifted his eyes. "Apologize?" "Yes." She took a slow breath. "That comment I made the other day about fixing the engine was unnecessary and unprofessional. I was frustrated. And I spoke without thinking. You didn't deserve that." Marcus was quiet. He wasn't expecting such directness from her. He looked at her and saw sincerity in her expression. "I accept your apology," he said gently. "People say things in stressful moments. I understand." Victoria felt a small sense of relief. She had worried about this moment more than she wanted to admit. "Thank you," she said, but the meeting wasn't over. She leaned forward and continued. "There's something else." She tapped her tablet, showing a chart. "I reviewed the company's mechanical department reports. Your name appears many times, especially in the sections praising excellent work." Marcus blinked. No one had ever told him that before. "You've made significant improvements to the machines," she added. "Repairs that usually last weeks, yours last months. You've saved the company a lot of time and resources." Marcus felt his chest warm with quiet pride. He didn't do any of that for praise, he did it because he cared about his work. "Thank you, ma'am," he replied. "I believe you have knowledge beyond regular mechanic work," she said. "You think like an engineer." Marcus's eyes widened slightly. It was the first time anyone at the company had said something like that to him. Victoria continued. "I want to understand your perspective better. I want to know what improvements you think we should make. I want to know where the company equipment needs attention." She paused, then said something Marcus never expected. "I want to hear your ideas." For a moment, Marcus didn't know what to say. No CEO had ever asked for his ideas. He was used to taking orders, not giving suggestions. But he sensed she was being sincere. She really wanted his opinion. "I do have some ideas," he said softly. "If you'd like to hear them." Victoria leaned forward with interest. "I would." So Marcus opened his notebook and began explaining simple ways to reduce breakdowns, improve maintenance schedules, and train workers more effectively. As he spoke, Victoria listened carefully, taking notes. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush him, and didn't show impatience. Her eyes stayed focused and thoughtful. Halfway through his explanation, she realized she had misjudged him deeply. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was someone who understood machinery on a deeper level. Someone who observed problems before they became serious. Someone who cared about doing things right. When Marcus finished speaking, Victoria sat quietly for a moment, impressed. "You have remarkable insight," she said. "Why haven't you shared these ideas before?" Marcus smiled politely. "I didn't think anyone would be interested." Victoria felt an unexpected sting of guilt. If her company had missed out on talent like Marcus because she or others didn't pay attention, that meant something needed to change. "Well," she said with a soft smile, "I'm interested. And I want you to continue sharing." The tone in the room changed. It wasn't a CEO talking down to an employee, it was one professional speaking with another. Victoria stood up and walked around her desk. "Marcus, I want to give you an opportunity," she said. "I'd like you to work with our technical team. Not full-time, just as an advisor for now. Someone who helps us understand what's happening on the ground." Marcus's eyes widened. "An advisor?" "Yes," she replied. "Your experience is valuable, and I want to make use of it." Marcus took a slow breath, letting the moment settle in. He knew his life might change if he accepted, but this wasn't something he feared. He felt ready. "I would be honored," he said finally. Victoria smiled genuinely this time. "Good. Then we'll start next week." But just before the meeting ended, something unexpected happened. She hesitated, then said softly, "And, thank you for staying calm the other day. You could have reacted differently." "You handled everything with grace." Marcus nodded. "It's important to stay calm. Machines don't respond well to stress, and neither do people. Victoria let out a small laugh at his words, light, surprised, and real. It was the first time she had smiled like that during their entire interaction. As Marcus stood up to leave, she extended her hand. He shook it. The handshake was respectful, sincere, and surprisingly gentle. When Marcus exited the office, he felt lighter. He didn't know exactly what the future held, but he knew something meaningful had begun today. Something built not on jokes or frustration, but on understanding and respect. Victoria watched him leave and felt something she rarely felt: admiration. She didn't know why this simple mechanic had stayed on her mind since the engine incident, but after today, she understood. He wasn't ordinary, he wasn't forgettable, and she found herself looking forward to seeing him again. The days after Marcus's visit to the headquarters felt different for both him and Victoria. Something had shifted, something small but undeniable. Though they came from completely different worlds, with different responsibilities and experiences, they now had a connection built on respect and sincerity. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't dramatic, it was simply human. And sometimes, that is the beginning of something bigger. Marcus continued his regular work at the distribution center. But now he also had a new role. Twice a week, he joined video meetings with the technical team from headquarters. At first, he felt nervous. The engineers used complicated terms, and some spoke quickly as if they expected everyone to understand instantly. But Marcus soon realized his practical knowledge helped them more than he expected. While they talked about designs, systems, and data, Marcus talked about real problems machines faced on the warehouse floor. He explained what broke down most often, what caused delays, and how simple changes could make everything smoother. At first, a few engineers were surprised, but eventually, they grew to appreciate his ideas so much that they asked for his input more often than the regular advisors. Marcus didn't brag about it, he simply did his work the same way he always had. Calmly, honestly, and with focus. Meanwhile, Victoria watched all of this from her office. She kept up with the reports and updates from the technical team. Almost every week, someone mentioned Marcus's helpful insights. It surprised her how quickly he adapted to the meetings and how naturally others began to trust his ideas. At the same time, Victoria found herself thinking about him more often. She wondered how he was doing, how he felt about his new responsibilities, and whether he needed support or guidance. She also wondered if he still remembered the comment she had made on that stressful day. One afternoon, she called her assistant. "Can you schedule a visit to the distribution center next week?" she asked. Her assistant looked up, surprised. "Another visit so soon? Ma'am?" "Yes," Victoria said simply. "There are things I need to review myself." But the truth was, she wanted to check on Marcus again. She felt she owed him more than just one apology. She wanted to show him she respected him not just through words, but through actions. When the day arrived, the employees at the center were once again alert and nervous. Victoria's visits always made everyone stand a little straighter, speak a little softer, and work a little faster. Marcus didn't expect to see her. He was repairing a conveyor belt that had been giving trouble for weeks. While he worked, another employee rushed into the workshop and whispered, "She's here again." Marcus looked up. "Miss Hale?" "Yes," the employee nodded. Marcus wiped his hands, but he didn't rush. He continued tightening the last few screws, making sure the machine was working smoothly. After all, no matter who visited, his job stayed the same. A few minutes later, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw Victoria standing there, dressed in a navy blue suit, looking calm and confident. "Good morning, Marcus," she said. He nodded respectfully. "Good morning, ma'am. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. I'm almost done." She watched him finish the repair with quiet admiration. He worked with steady hands, checking every detail carefully. When he stood up, she said, "You always work with this much focus?" "It's the only way the machines stay healthy," he replied with a small smile. She returned the smile, something she didn't do very often at work. After a moment, she said, "Can you walk with me? There's something I want to review." They walked together through the warehouse. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't uncomfortable. It felt natural. The employees watched quietly, surprised to see the CEO speaking calmly with a mechanic, discussing equipment like colleagues. Victoria asked him questions about the machines, the workflow, and the workers' needs. Marcus answered simply, using words everyone could understand. She appreciated that about him. He never tried to show off. He never tried to prove he was smarter than anyone else. He just spoke honestly. As they walked, she noticed how other workers smiled when they saw Marcus. They greeted him warmly. They trusted him. Victoria admired that. Leadership wasn't only about holding a high position, it was also about how people felt in your presence. And in Marcus's presence, people felt safe and supported. After an hour of walking and talking, Victoria asked if they could speak privately in the small break room. Marcus agreed. They sat at a table, she with her polished posture, he with his relaxed calmness. "I wanted to check on you," she began. "I know the new advisor role is different from your usual work." Marcus nodded. "Yes, it is. But I like the challenge. I've been hearing very positive feedback," she said. "The team respects your ideas." "That means a lot," he replied gently. There was a small pause. Then Victoria spoke again, more softly than before. "I've also been thinking about how I treated you that day," she admitted. "Not just the comment, but the way I spoke to you before it. I didn't treat you the way a leader should treat a team member." Marcus listened quietly. "I want you to know," she continued, "that I respect your work, and I respect you." Marcus felt the sincerity in her voice. "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that." Victoria exhaled slowly, looking relieved. "I'm trying to change how I speak to people. I want to be firm, but also fair." "You're doing better," Marcus said kindly. "Everyone has stressful days." She smiled, touched by his understanding. He didn't judge her. He didn't hold her mistake over her head. Instead, he gave her room to grow, something she rarely received from anyone. They spent the next 30 minutes discussing ideas to improve the center. Their conversation flowed smoothly, as if they had been working together for years. Victoria felt comfortable talking to him, something she didn't experience often with her own executives. Marcus was honest without being harsh, intelligent without being showy, and kind without being weak. After the meeting, Victoria stood up. "Thank you for your time, Marcus. I always learn something new when I talk to you." "I feel the same," he replied. As she walked toward the exit, she paused at the door and looked back at him. For a moment, their eyes met with quiet understanding. Neither of them said anything more, but something warm passed between them, something that neither of them fully understood yet. Over the next few weeks, their communication increased naturally. Victoria emailed him for advice, and Marcus responded with thoughtful explanations. Sometimes she called him during lunch breaks, just to ask for his opinion about a new idea. Their conversations became more frequent, more comfortable, and more personal. Victoria found herself smiling whenever she saw his name appear on her phone. Marcus found himself thinking about her calm voice long after their conversations ended. Still, they remained respectful. They both understood boundaries, but both also felt the growing connection, something slow, gentle, and surprising. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply two people learning to see each other clearly, and, little by little, the joke Victoria once made about marrying him transformed into a memory they both thought of very differently now. Less like a joke, and more like a strange, accidental beginning of something meaningful. Neither of them said it out loud. Neither of them needed to. The way they spoke, the way they listened, the way they trusted everything, said enough. And as the days went on, that small spark of understanding between them grew into something neither of them expected when their paths first crossed. The weeks that followed brought more changes than anyone expected, especially for Marcus. His role as an advisor slowly became an important part of the company's daily operations. Engineers asked for his thoughts, managers relied on his guidance, and even workers from other branches sent him messages asking for help with their machines. But the biggest change was not in his job, it was in his connection with Victoria. What started as polite professional contact had grown into something gentle and meaningful. Whenever she called him, her voice sounded softer. Whenever he emailed her, he wrote with more comfort and confidence. They shared ideas, stories from their workdays, and even small jokes that only the two of them understood. Still, both of them kept their relationship respectful and steady. Neither crossed any boundaries. Neither rushed anything. But the warmth between them was real and noticeable. One morning, the company held a large event at headquarters. It was an appreciation program for employees who had made a strong impact during the year. Hundreds of workers came. The auditorium was bright, decorated with banners and screens showing photos of teams from different branches. Marcus didn't expect to be invited, but a week earlier, he had received an official message asking him to attend. He assumed the company simply wanted all advisors present. He arrived early, wearing a clean shirt and a new pair of trousers he had bought just for the event. He felt slightly nervous. He had never been in such a formal setting, surrounded by so many people dressed in suits and elegant clothes. As he stood quietly near a corner, he suddenly heard a familiar voice. Marcus. He turned and saw Victoria walking toward him. She wore a simple but stylish dress, and her smile was calm and warm. "You made it," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Thank you for inviting me." She shook her head. "You were invited because you earned your place here." Her words settled gently in his heart. Before he could say more, she added, "Stay near the front. There's something I want you to see." He didn't understand what she meant, but he nodded. When the event began, the CEO herself stepped onto the stage. The room fell silent. Cameras flashed. People clapped. She welcomed everyone, spoke about the company's progress, and thanked the employees for their dedication. Then she said something unexpected. "There is someone here today whose work has inspired an important change in how we manage our technical systems." Marcus felt himself freeze. Was she talking about him? Victoria continued. "This person's hands-on knowledge has helped us prevent future breakdowns, save costs, and improve safety. He reminds us that real talent doesn't always sit in high offices, it often works quietly in the background." The audience listened with interest. "And because of his outstanding contribution," she said, her voice warm and steady, "we are promoting him to senior technical advisor." All eyes turned toward Marcus. His heart skipped a beat. He never saw this coming. "Please welcome," Victoria said gently, "Marcus Reed." The room filled with applause. Some people stood. Others smiled warmly. Marcus felt overwhelmed but walked toward the stage calmly, the way he always carried himself. When he reached Victoria, she handed him a certificate and shook his hand. Cameras flashed again. The moment felt almost unreal, but then something happened that only the two of them noticed. She didn't let go of his hand right away. She squeezed his fingers softly, just for a second. A silent message. Marcus looked into her eyes, and she looked into his. Respect, gratitude, connection. He stepped away from the stage to sit back down, still feeling the echo of her words. After the event ended, many employees congratulated him. Some shook his hand. Some thanked him for helping them in the past. But Marcus found himself watching the crowd, searching for Victoria. She noticed and approached him with a relaxed smile. "You looked surprised," she said. "I was," he admitted. "I still am." "You deserve it, Marcus." He looked at her with gentle honesty. "Thank you for believing in me." She nodded. "You earned that all on your own. I just did what was right." There was a brief pause, comfortable, peaceful. Then she said quietly, "I want to show you something. If you have a moment." Marcus agreed, and she led him to a quiet balcony connected to the auditorium. The city stretched below them, glowing under the afternoon sun. The wind was soft, and for a moment, the busy sounds of the event behind them faded into the background. Victoria rested her hands on the railing. "Do you remember the first day we met?" she asked, a small smile forming on her lips. Marcus laughed softly. "The day your car refused to start, and the day I said something foolish," she added, a bit embarrassed but also amused. He looked at her kindly. "It's in the past." "I know," she said, "but sometimes I still think about it. That moment showed me something about myself. Something I wanted to change. Marcus listened quietly. You didn't react with anger, she continued. You didn't make me feel embarrassed. You simply helped. And afterward, you treated me with the same respect you give everyone. That's how we should treat people, he said gently. She turned her head toward him. Because of you, Marcus, I've learned to speak differently, listen more, and appreciate the people who do the real work. He felt warmth in his chest. Her words were soft, but they meant more than any award. Thank you, he said. There was a peaceful silence between them, soft, natural, meaningful. Then, with a playful smile, Victoria said, You know, I still remember that joke I made. She paused. Fix this engine, and I'll marry you. Marcus laughed quietly. Yes, I remember. She looked at him thoughtfully. You did fix the engine. He raised an eyebrow with gentle humor. I suppose I did. For the first time since that day, they both allowed themselves to laugh about it, not as a rude comment, not as an uncomfortable memory, but as a strange moment that had somehow brought them together. Then Marcus said softly, Well, now the rest is your move. Victoria's eyes widened slightly, surprised by his boldness. Then a warm smile spread across her face. I'll keep that in mind, she replied. Neither of them rushed the moment. Neither of them made any promises. But the understanding between them grew deeper, clearer, and stronger than ever before. As they stood on the balcony, side by side, looking over the city, they both felt the same quiet truth. Some connections are accidental, some are unexpected, and some begin with a broken engine and a careless joke, but grow into respect, gratitude, and something beautifully sincere. Their story wasn't over. In many ways, it was only just beginning.